I loved her. Unfortunately, I did have to kill her, and I feel nothing about that. I keep doing hand gestures. None of these vampire powers come with anyone doing this. No one's doing this at all. This is a bad... Hold on. Okay, this is the one. Let's turn it down. That's a lot. Yeah, I feel happy with this. I feel safe and comfortable. Hey, remember last month when I made an Encanto video and that's relevant and very hip and now? This month I've made the fun choice to just kind of ruin my whole algorithm, and that's okay. In the Encanto video, I mentioned that there could be another Encanto video coming, and that's still true. I still am in the process of writing the next Encanto video, but for now, the next Twilight video is done. Oh wait, I usually sing in the intro, don't I? What are we to tell your father, in my house, in my house? What are we to tell Prince Andre? Oh, what do we tell your betrothed? Natasha, come here, kiss me. Press your wet face to mine. Don't touch me. You were not kept under lock and key, carrying you off like I'm not gonna say that word. And if he had carried you off, he's a scoundrel, he's a rat. That's a fact. He is better than any of you, I say. He's better than any of you, I say. Why did you interfere? Oh gosh, what is it all? What is it? Who are you to tell me? I think that what I should do is I should say to myself, okay, you may sing for 10 seconds. Greetings and salutations, beautiful humans. This is the Amity Elf, almost said the old one. This is the Amity Elf here, and my necklace has the latch in the front. I'm not gonna do a lengthy intro. If you've seen the past How I Would Reboot Twilight into a Series thing, then you know kind of where I'm going with this. If you haven't seen all of the previous How I Would Reboot Twilight into a TV series videos, then you could probably go back and watch those. I mean, if you want to, I think it would be fun. I think you could maybe like carve out a little bit of time, head back to those, regardless of whether you know or are into Twilight. I feel like you could probably enjoy it either way. So the first Twilight video was just like an overview, how I would reboot Twilight as a series. The second one was how I would reboot the Twilight characters, specifically the human characters. Third one, how I would reboot the Cullens, the characters who are the Cullens. This video was supposed to be how I would reboot the other vampire characters, but in a manner characteristic of myself, I've gotten a little verbose with it, haven't I? So this video is actually going to be how I would reboot the Volturi. Everybody loves the Volturi, man. Those guys are great. Intro's over. We're just going into it now. Specifically, the Volturi members that I'm going to be doing characterization for now are Aro, Caius, Marcus, Jane, Alec, Heidi, Demetri, Felix, Chelsea, and Sulpicia. I assure you, these are all canon names. The point where I start making up OCs is not in this video. If you're a diehard Twilight fan and you're like, I recognize all of those names, I know exactly who you're talking about, that's awesome. If you're a casual Twilight fan and you're like, okay, I know who Aro, Caius, and Marcus are, who are these, like, who's Chelsea? That's okay. If you're south of casual, hold on to me, little bird, I'm gonna get you through it. Basically, Aro, Caius, and Marcus are the leaders of the Volturi. They got 3 kings, and it's Aro, Caius, and Marcus.
Remarkable.
Canonically, they all have had mates, all female mates, because Stephanie Meyer, you know, she does not write gayness. All 3 of them have had female mates. Marcus's mate has died a long time ago. He's still real bummed about it, understatement.
Let us be done with this.
Aro's mate is Sulpicia. Caius's mate is Athenadora. We do not learn any information about Athenadora and Sulpicia in the series other than the fact that they are Aro and Caius's mates, which means I've got some fertile land to make stuff up. It's great. Jane and Alec, they're twins and they're young vampires, but not so young that it's illegal because it is against the law to make child vampires, specifically like toddler vampires. They're like in their mid-teens. If you recall my first Twilight video, I did say that I fan cast them as McKenna Grace and Finn Wolfhard. They're basically the enforcement. They have powers that enable them to punish people. Demetri and Felix are also very powerful to the Volturi. Demetri tracks people. Felix is just big. Heidi's thing is that she brings in humans for them to eat. Chelsea's thing is that she helps recruit more people into the Volturi by breaking their bonds with other people and forming bonds with the Volturi. That is her power. That's a quick overview. Again, we're going to go into more detail when we get into the sections. I promise you it's going to be fine. Unlike with the humans and the Cullens, before we get to the characters themselves, we do have to have a section that says, when are we going to learn this stuff? When are we going to start to see this characterization pop up? At what point are we going to know these things about the characters? That's what I'm about to explain to you right now. For the leaders, so Aro, Caius, and Marcus, some of the characterization is going to be done in expository flashbacks in the first season. So, you know, the first season is Twilight, second season is New Moon, etc. In Twilight, we get like passing mentions of the Volturi, kind of, but they don't really get explained in detail until New Moon. Since we have the opportunity to Lemony Snicket style retroactively pretend that we had set up for future events, we're going to retroactively pretend that we have set up for future events. And it does help that Rosalie is now a main character, so a significant amount of scenes are now going to be dedicated to the vampire point of of view, so the Volturi is much more of an entity for them than it is for Bella, so we get more opportunities to talk about them. We're gonna start describing and setting up the Volturi leaders in season 1 when the plot of Twilight is happening. From what we've established in season 1, we're gonna build on that early in season 2 just to kind of refresh the audience, like, hey, remember those guys? Keep those in mind, they might be important later. For those of you who have watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, remember how right before Crossroads of Destiny in the previously on Avatar section, they had the, by the way, remember how if you get killed in the Avatar state, the Avatar ceases to exist? Food for thought. Make sure you keep that keep that information in your back pocket for later. And then you're like, oh no, why are they reminding us of this? We're gonna start to get the Jane, Alec, Demetri, and Felix characterization at the end of season 2, because you know that's when the confrontation with the Volturi actually happens. Bella goes there, so she meets them and we get to see them actually acting. Also a little bit of Heidi, so Jane, Alec, Demetri, Felix, and Heidi are gonna start to get characterization at the end of season 2. This will be the first we learn of these guys because they have not been mentioned by Edward earlier. We're gonna pepper in the occasional Volturi scenes in seasons 3 and 4. We won't see the Volturi leaders in season 3 because I like to maintain that kind of mystery as to what they're up to, but we are going to see Jane, Alec, Demetri, and Felix, and I realize that seeing what Jane, Alec, Demetri, and Felix are doing during the plot of Eclipse is kind of exactly like the Eclipse movie. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Alec wasn't present for these events in the book. I'm pretty sure that like it was just Jane, Demetri, and Felix, and Alec was kind of not here for this one, I believe. Now we're kind of verging on movie territory. That's a risk I kind of want to take though, because I do like the direction the movie went with this one. And I want the twins to stay together. In season 4, I think it would be spookier if we don't see the kind of preparations the Volturis are making before the battle. The movie shows us the Volturi like in action, like they show us them executing the Cullens' allies and stuff. I think that it would be spookier if we just have the Cullens have lines where they say, we were expecting more people, the Volturi must be deterring people en route. My calls aren't getting through to so-and-so, etc. They're being waylaid, maybe even killed. Can we ask this of our friends? Etc. That kind of thing. Like just ominous vibes of like, hey, we were expecting more people. It was already a little dubious to think that we could make it with the group we expected, but if a lot of them aren't showing up, this is not great for us. But we are going to see the Volturi early in season 4. The latter half of season 4, they're dropping off just for the ominous vibes, but the beginning of season 4, we are going to see them. We're going to see them react to the news of Bella's changing and the news of her marrying Edward. As soon as we see the scene of Irina leaving from the Cullen house, it is radio silent from the Volturi. We don't even see Irina tell them, it is all in shadow from then on. We just know, oh wait, she told the Volturi. And then in the battle, it's a whole extended scene of them like interacting with the Cullens and each other, and it's great. Seasons 5 and 6 though are going to be the real Volturi characterization seasons. As I've said in previous videos, season 4 is where we end with book canon, and season 5 we get to just kind of go wild. In season 5, the Cullens are going to be bringing Renesmee by the Volturi to have checkups with them because they're like, okay, fine, she's not dangerous, but we still want to know how her growth is going, her progress. We want to study her since she's kind of a new species, not brand new, but she's within the first 10 of the new species, and we can't really get on the phone with Johan, so you're the guy. While this is happening in season 5, tensions are going to start building between the Volturi and the werewolves. In season 6, tensions are going to head up, and it's like we're actively kind of like fighting now. The conflict will have escalated to the point that now the werewolves and the Cullens are in hiding, and the allies of the Cullens. I kind of gone into this in the humans video, so like check that out for the idea of Renee with a flamethrower. But yeah, in season 6, the Cullens, the werewolves, and their allies are actively opposing the Volturi. It needn't come to a kind of like good versus evil battle, because I want to approach it with some degree of nuance, but you know. Now we can finally talk about the characters. You would think since Aro is like the main king of the Volturi, like he's the one all of the decisions are going through really, you'd think that because of all of that I would do him first, but I'm actually going to do Caius first because I'm going to be contrasting Aro with him in a minute. Caius in canon is the strictest of the kings. He's the one who's like, you gotta change Bella or you're breaking the law, we gotta kill you, etc. He's basically the bad cop to Aro's good cop, because it's more or less implied, yeah, Aro wouldn't just let them go with breaking the law, but he gets to pretend to be like, oh, I'm so nice, brother, you want to kill them? Like he gets to be the nice one because Caius is there going like, hey, they broke the law, we gotta kill them.
What do we do with you now?
She knows too much. She's a liability.
That's true.
Pretty much the extent of his characterization is that he's the one who's like, we gotta enforce the law. He doesn't even have a power, he's kind of just there to be mean so Aro can be nice. In this show, Caius is gonna be the one who is the most convinced of the Volturi's exceptionalism. By which I mean, to Caius, they are in fact the line between order and chaos. Their rules are the only things keeping vampire kind alive in Caius's mind. I just need to quickly disclaim, those things I said at the beginning, oh yeah, in book canon, this is what Caius was like, that was me getting that out of the way. From here on out, it is gonna be be me making things up, so don't go to the books expecting this characterization. I am making the rest of this up. Early on in their rule, Caius just thought their laws were the most civilized way to go about doing things. Yeah, don't be messy, don't kill conspicuously, because that's gross and very uncool. Don't be undignified about your killing. It besmirches the name of vampire. Sure, humans are weak, but don't be tacky and gauche about it. Yeah, we could probably just corral humans into little farms and eat them at will, but then we don't get to see their little operas or whatever. And hey, if it came down to it, they could kill a lot of us, not all of us, but they could have a body count if they just like got a lot of fire. They could leave a dent. As they've ruled for longer and longer though, his attitude has changed because humans have become more advanced. In his lifetime or unlifetime, he has watched humans become powerful enough to actually cause extinction of vampires if they wanted to. If it came to a war between humans and vampires, vampires could take a lot of humans out, but humans would wipe them out because there aren't that many vampires. There are like rather few, and we have pretty intense weaponry now, and they're flammable. Now humans could wipe out vampires for sure instead of potentially. His attitude has become sterner. He fears humanity at large, and now any vampire who starts, breaking the law and getting too conspicuous with it, now you are trying to kill us. The Volturi's law of secrecy is vampires' only hope of survival. If you are violating that law, you're trying to get us all killed. We gotta kill you before you take the whole ship down. Natasha was not asleep. Maybe I've made him sound skittish and fearful, but let it be known, this fear manifests in a very hawkish way. Very no-nonsense and violent and austere. Insert commentary about fear and violence and the interplay of power and fear to create violence and stuff. You got this. I know that I keep emphasizing that I want the show to be different from the movies, and I know that lately I've only been bringing that up in the context of how I'm breaking that rule, but I do want to follow the movie's idea of, instead of following the book description, having Caius be hot. He doesn't have to necessarily be young, but I do want him to be hot. Jamie Campbell Bower's version of the character really stuck with me, and that's okay, okay? I'm allowed to want Caius to be hot. Canonically, Caius hates werewolves, which is why, as I mentioned in my first Twilight video, Breaking Dawn the book randomly announces out of nowhere that the werewolves we've been calling werewolves this whole time weren't actually werewolves, they're just wolf shapeshifters. They're shapeshifters who happen to have chosen wolf as their thing. Could have been anything, but it isn't. Ever. And maybe in the series at some point we're gonna have someone be like, actually, I think maybe I'm gonna transform into like a falcon or something. Here, I stand by the fact that we're not gonna change the terminology around wolves and werewolves and stuff in the 11th hour, but we will say they're a different kind of werewolf than the one he knew. Canonically, Caius hunted all of the real werewolves, and as far as anyone is concerned, there are basically none left. That sounds a lot like the G word, which maybe we want to move away from in this. Gonna move back from the G word because that would make the thing I'm about to say really hard to manage. Let's get that off the table. Instead, I will say that there was a war between the European werewolves and the Volturi-led vampires. Caius was a major player in that war. He fought against them, and ultimately, the European wolves lost, and the death toll from that wasn't what wiped them out. It was the dwindling food source as a result from loss of territory, which isn't better. We're also gonna paint the loss of the European wolves as a tragedy, which Stephanie Meyer never really did. She was just like, oh, we killed those off anyway. Which, I mean, fine, it wasn't the focus of the scene. It was just there to hand-wave the idea that wolves and vampires are natural enemies, which wasn't even that much of a thing anyway. It's like internally she was going, oh man, I gotta explain why the Volturi aren't making a fuss over the fact that wolves and vampires are natural enemies. And I, as a young reader, was like, no, I didn't think the Volturi were gonna really have a problem with them. It seemed like the whole wolf-vampire rivalry was localized to the Greater Forks region, but turns out it had to be a whole thing, and we had to bring the G word into the mix. All of this to say, Caius is still gonna be terrified of werewolves, but he didn't directly contribute to them being extinct. And I'm saying this because I want him to have romantic tension with Leah. Not as a real, actual, they are going to be a couple ship, but I do want Caius to have a part tsundere, part yandere villainous crush on Leah. And she resents everything he stands for, obviously. Hear me out. Besides the obvious forbidden love vibes, and besides the fact that after all she's been through, Leah just kind of deserves to have someone be passionately in love with her, and you know how I love that yandere trope, man. I want someone high-ranking in the vampire government to be invested in Leah's well-being. I want this man pining. Those are kind of the two main reasons, but this is Twilight, so that's enough. After multiple seasons of having to watch Leah confront problems and be strong and stuff, it will be very satisfying to see, she and the wolves are actively confronting the Volturi, they're actively antagonizing the Volturi, and Caius is like, okay, but we do need to keep Leah alive, don't harm her. Yes, we do have to triumph in this second war with the wolves, But once we do, and I cannot emphasize this enough, Leah does have to stay alive. She is very much leading the effort against us, but I'm gonna go ahead and keep her alive after the war is over, and you can't ask questions about it. Really, the only ones in a position to question him would be Aro and Marcus, and Aro just wants to keep control over Caius, so as long as Caius doesn't let her influence him, Aro doesn't care, and Marcus doesn't care about anything. For this dynamic, I basically want to take everything that was interesting and fun about Reylo from Star Wars, and please keep hearing me out. I want to take everything that was interesting and fun about them and then don't ruin it. Like, get rid of everything that was annoying and bad. So yes, romantic tension between a leader of the villains and a leader of the rebels. No to wobifying the white leader of the villains and then treating the black character who defected from the villains because he couldn't bear to hurt innocent people as a punchline, never writing him in a complex way, and treating his pain like a joke instead of an actual pain that matters for a character. I digress, but I'm like really mad about how they handled that. Actually, I don't digress yet. I do have to say, if they had made Finn a white twink, if they had had like a white twink go in there and be like, oh no, I can't kill innocent people, do you know how much fan fiction there would be about him? But I digress! That's for a future video, which I might actually make now that I'm thinking about it. Caius and Leah are gonna first interact in season 4 when the events of Breaking Dawn are happening. In the climax of Breaking Dawn, there is a moment where Edward is standing with Aro on the Volturi side so that Aro can, read him. And Bella is told to bring Renesmee over so that Aro can, see for himself like, oh, she's a hybrid, let me check her out. Not in that way, why'd I do this? Anyway, and what Bella does is she goes, okay, Emmett, Jacob, come with me. She chooses Jacob because he imprinted on Renesmee so he would hate to be left behind. She chooses Emmett because Emmett just loves the drama. Basically, she's like, Emmett, I know that you're an agent of chaos and I want to indulge that, come on in. Those are some very solid reasons, especially when you take the child grooming out of the Jacob-Renesmee relationship, and I do love that Emmett's just like, man, I want to be in the room where it happens. But I think for the sake of the 3 main characters being who they are, I am gonna instead say that she brings Rosalie and Leah with her, just so like we get the trailer shot of Bella, Rosalie, and Leah walking forward towards the Volturi. That is the trailer for the season finale, or the 2-part season finale, probably 2-part season finale. Next week. Shot of them walking up together, shot of like someone's hand touching Aro's, we don't know whose because it's the camera angle. I need to stop developing this. Moving on. Leah's already in human form and clothed. When she walks up with Bella and Rosalie, Caius starts kind of eyeing her and making skeptical comments about werewolves. She's snarking at him in return and he is visibly smitten. He's visibly very into her already. Partially because I don't want it to seem like between seasons the fan works that have inevitably come of them have influenced the writing. Oh yeah, they have an interaction and then there's fan fiction about them and then the writers decided to make them a couple. No, it was in the plans the whole time. Leah very specifically does not like vampires who eat people. That's kind of a thing she has, that she doesn't like murder. So she is not taking an interest in Caius in return. He's taking interest in her. I think that's really where the Reylo ship fell off for me, is when Reylo started being like, you know what, I think I like you too, guy who's destroying planets and stuff. I think for me at least, the best reaction that a character in this position could have is disinterest, not even hatred. I don't just dislike that Rey's reaction to I kill people because I had a sad event happen in my past is, oh no, I had no idea you had a reason. I also dislike that her overall reaction to him being a murderer is such an active anger that it seems to imply that it takes like a special kind of evil to be a murderer or something. Like it seems to distinguish him in a way. You don't have to be special to murder someone, you just have to not murder someone, which I guess could be said about anything. Like I could make a sentence where I say, you don't have to be special to win a Nobel Prize, you just have to not win a Nobel Prize, which means that I didn't make an argument just now, I just kind of said a belief of mine, which is that murder isn't hard, interesting, or cool. I just feel like having Rey, who grew up around cruelty and violence, be super mad and like surprised that Kylo Ren murdered feels more like an audience surrogate thing than an in-character thing. I'm just using it as an example though. This is an example of the kind of dynamic I want Leah to have with Caius. Being a murderer isn't an interesting character trait. Leah regards Caius as an adversary, not as like a special enemy or a villain. Other than on a situational basis, he's not worth her time to think about. He's not worth her energy to hate. He's just a guy who sucks and needs to be overthrown in her mind. It doesn't occur to her that Caius has taken a particular interest in her until after the confrontation with the Volturi, at which point Edward just kind of tells her that he did. When the wolves and the Volturi start to have conflict in season 5, concurrent with Renesmee having to go to the Volturi for checkups, that's also when Leah, Sam, and Jacob are gonna go to the Volturi to kind of speak to the Volturi leaders and try to engender peace, try to resolve their difference in regard for human life peacefully. The wolves have a treaty with the Cullens. Now every vampire knows about them, so they need to form a treaty with the Volturi so that it's not like, hey, we gotta kill those guys, right? They're talking to the Volturi about that. The Volturi are like, hey, it's kind of cool how you can kill us really easily. Could we maybe get you in here as some of our employees. In Breaking Dawn, they mention this idea. They phrase it as guard dogs, and I kind of want to remove that idea. I'd like to dehumanize the wolves less than we do in the books, if you can imagine. But anyway, season 5 is where the most Leah and Caius interactions happen. At some point, there's a contrived reason for Leah and Caius to be alone. Caius, being part tsundere, part yandere, is going to start needling Leah about Sam. He's gonna say something along the lines of like, oh, Marcus said that there's some unresolved feelings there. Of course, he's not gonna talk like that. He's gonna talk like he's ancient. Marcus saw unresolved feelings between Leah and Sam on Leah's end, not on Sam's end. Sam, it is cut off completely because the imprint bond was like, oh, guess I don't feel anything for you anymore, bye. But Leah still has some of the feeling. She's not trying to get back together with him, but she still feels something for what they used to have because they were going to get married. She had created in her mind a future with him. Caius is gonna needle her about that. It's not gonna go as intended. Leah at some point is also gonna say something along the lines of, your eyes are awfully red. You must have eaten someone earlier today. You know, in a judgmental way of like, your eyes are awfully red. You must have eaten someone earlier today. Something like that, I don't know. Leave it up to the actor. Those of you who listened to what I said earlier in the video may now be thinking, hey, what about Athenadora, who is Caius's mate? And I'm just kind of getting rid of her. She just doesn't exist because she barely existed in the books anyway, and I want to make this a thing. Erasing both her and Sulpicia would do nothing to change the story, but I'm not gonna erase Sulpicia, just her. If you're invested in Athenadora, I'm sorry. And I don't know how, but sorry. Caius and Leah, I guess it'd be called Kaya, but yeah, Kaya would be a ship people judge you for. I'm gonna give Leah other nicer people who like her, but I think some Caius-Leah tension would be some fun spice. I have not seen Vampire Diaries, but I think that it would have some Claraline or Clonny vibes. Her face was pale, her eyes wide open. Now for Aro. Aro in canon is the leader who's kind of sweet and passive-aggressive.
Bella is alive after all. Isn't that wonderful?
He finds things fascinating and he wants to get power from anything, which is why he finds things fascinating. He'll be like, oh, that's a cool power. Can I use that? Unlike Caius, he has a power where he can touch your hand and learn everything you've ever thought. He can read your mind to such a degree he knows every thought you've ever had with one touch. That's his deal in canon. In this show, however, okay, keep in your head what I said about Caius's view of them being like the only line between order and chaos and vampire destruction, etc. Aro always assumes a fanciful tone, but he takes a more cynical view to their rule than Caius does. From Aro's perspective, anyone can rule. Maybe some people would rule better than others. Maybe this guy's reign would get everybody killed. Maybe this guy's reign would make everything better. Whatever. The biggest deal for him is that he wants to be the one in power. That being said, he also has the most realistic and positive view of the Cullens out of the Volturi. Caius sees the Cullens as a threat to Volturi power because they have numbers as far as family goes and they have influence as far as allies go. Aro sees the Cullens as a long-term positive. Vampires by nature don't like rules, so having a vampire government at all is kind of making a lot of them uncomfortable because it's like, I want to just like kill a lot of people though is my thing. I want to just go to a town and start just eating people. And you guys are saying I have to like hide and like wait in an alleyway and get this one guy and pretend that he broke his neck and fell off a ladder or something. I have to go through all these steps when I could just like walk into a doggone Macy's and start getting into some necks. That's what you're saying to me, Volturi? I gotta be secretive? Basically, a lot of vampires don't like having any limits at all on how many people they can eat and how and under what circumstances. The fact that the Cullens are the second highest populated group of vampires and the second most influential group of vampires, and they have a way stricter policy with regards to eating people, is really good for the Volturi. It means that a majority of vampires have an incentive to support the Volturi. If we don't support the Volturi, what if the Volturi falls, the Cullens move into the power vacuum, and they make it against the law to eat people? What if we have to eat animals? Animals are gross. Basically, Aro uses the Cullens to create partisanship, despite the fact that the Cullens aren't actually vying for power. By letting them be powerful enough to worry the other vampires, but knowing that they won't actually challenge him, Aro is basically saying, here are your options. The people who say just don't be too obvious about eating what you like to eat, or the people who are saying you have to eat garbage. Because of this, he doesn't actually mind the Cullens gaining new members. Caius minds, Aro doesn't. But if the Cullens do start to challenge his authority, Aro does not play around. Aro has said in so many words, not in canon, but in the universe of the show, that he won't kill Carlisle, but he has no problem killing his family. He will kill every single other Cullen except for Carlisle. He likes Carlisle, but he'll kill all his family and he doesn't really care about that. Amusingly, there are members of the Volturi who have the same policy, but for Esme, as I mentioned in the Cullens video. I actually do want to emphasize this aspect of Aro though, that there are people he cares about that he actually won't hurt. I think that Meyer very specifically didn't want him to have that because she made it canon that he killed his sister. I think the vibe she was going for was, hey, Aro is evil, he will kill anybody to get an advantage. I want to add the tiniest sliver of nuance to that, like just a little bit. The dissonance is fun, I like the dissonance, but I think I like it more if instead of being polite but indiscriminately murderous, he's gonna be polite but discriminately murderous. And he treats everyone with the same kind of smiley, like, oh, I love this guy. He's that way with everyone, so you can't tell who's on his will kill list and who's on his won't kill list. And you would think that they're all the same level, but the cutoff is just so distinct. He would feel no remorse if he killed someone in the will kill group. He would perform remorse, like, oh, such a pity, but he wouldn't actually like stress about it. He wouldn't actually like lose, not sleep over it. He would feel no remorse if he killed someone in the will kill group, and it wouldn't even cross his mind to kill someone in the won't kill group. He killed his sister Demetri, and maybe it's more complex if he feels remorse for killing his sister, but I kind of like it if the vibe is more like, yes, I love Demetri with all my heart, but she was in the way, so had to I loved her. Unfortunately, I did have to kill her, and I feel nothing about that. I loved her for a time, and now she's gone. Who's to say who murdered Demetri? The internet says it's pronounced Didim. I've been pronouncing it Didimi, which sounds like it belongs in a dirty joke about Mario. Basically, instead of going, his skewed mind will kill anyone he loves, I'm instead gonna go, he has an internal logic that just none of us are privy to. There is a definite system within his mind about who it's okay to kill and who it isn't. None of us have access to that logic. That's largely why Marcus still doesn't know that he killed Didim. I did it right, yay. By the way, Didim was Marcus's mate, she's the one who died, and that's why he's so sad. Marcus still doesn't know that Aro is the one who killed Didim, and that's because he knows from his power sensing relationships, he knows that Aro loved Didim as much as he loves other people he won't kill. He loved her just as much as he loves someone like Carlisle, if not more, and he won't kill Carlisle, so of course he wouldn't kill Didim. Aro's kind of a more sinister reflection of Carlisle. The fact that he likes to study new things, the fact that he's collecting people. One aspect of his character that I want to hit really hard, or perhaps invent, is that he's a master manipulator. Aro is very skilled at using people's past experiences to get them to trust him. Knowing every thought you ever had isn't only useful for knowing if you've committed a crime against the Volturi or something. It's also really useful for knowing your vulnerabilities, opinions, and things like that, and then phrasing his arguments in a way that seem appealing to you. No matter what argument he's making, he can phrase it in a way that sounds very enticing since he knows what you already agree with. Kind of like how TERFs use the language of feminism to oppress the already oppressed. Aro isn't a TERF though. Watching Aro manipulate someone will be a conflicting experience if you're an audience member who reacts to media the way I do. We will on some level hate him and hate what he's doing, but a part of us will be going, ooh, that was well done, that was good, that was a smart angle to use, man, he nailed that one. A simultaneous experience of, you jerk, and, ooh, yep, that'll do it, yeah, good job. Honestly, if we could get Michael Sheen in again for Aro, I wouldn't be mad at it, even though that, again, copyright, but also, he was very fun to watch, you know? As I kind of hinted at earlier, Sulpicia is gonna be a more prominent character than she was in the books. So you might think that as a result of that, I would tone down the fact that Aro is flirty with absolutely everyone around him. But that is not going to be the case. I am going to go ahead and keep the fact that Aro is kind of flirtatious and like grabby and like creepy and stuff. I like it, we're keeping it. Oh no, what have I done? I don't want this to be a significantly shorter section than the Caius section, but that is pretty much all I have for Aro. That's kind of all you need. You just need that. You don't really know what's going on in his head with regards to who he will and won't kill, except that you know he's not gonna kill Carlisle. His relationship with Sulpicia is gonna be further explained in the Sulpicia section. Now for Marcus.
What joy.
Marcus is the third and final king of the Volturi. Marcus is the least talkative and the least active in the running of the Volturi. He has an apathetic demeanor, a depressed demeanor, and his power is that he can see the relationships between people. He can like sense the dimensions of people's relationships. Aro finds this power very useful to him, so he really needs to keep Marcus around. The reason Aro killed his own sister Didim is because as Marcus's mate, she was starting to draw Marcus away, and it's like, haha, no, Marcus needs to stay with me and be king of the Volturi, so you're gonna have to die, bye. Because vampire mating is such an intense bond, her having died has really just plunged him into like unimaginable grief. Nothing matters to him anymore. As for this show though, we're not gonna be playing Marcus for laughs the way the movie did. We're not playing him for angst either exactly, but we're not going for the same vibe as the movies. In the movies, it's never really explained that he's going through incomparable loss, and that's why he's not really invested in the drama. That's not to say the movies did a bad job, because they didn't mention that they got to make the choice to use Marcus as a fun running gag. Like, this guy doesn't care about anything. He's so old and tired. He's like so sick of these two other leaders of the Volturi. I do enjoy movie Marcus and how over it he is, especially when he's dryly cutting through Aro's sweet facades.
What do we do with you now?
You already know what you're going to do, Aro.
There's one deleted scene that I love where Aro has the guards kill a human messenger for like a small trivial offense.
Valentina has brought us something.
She should not have interrupted.
She's new.
Aren't they all?
The lady walks in and Aro's like, "Ah, you're here." And Caius is like, "She should not have interrupted." And I love the way he delivers that line. And Aro's like, "She's new," and kind of like a, "Oh, don't be mean." And then Marcus is like, "Aren't they all?" And I love that. Those three lines in succession are just like the perfect character snapshot for the movie's interpretation of the characters, where Caius is the one who's like, "You broke a rule, we gotta kill ya." And Aro's like, "No, we can't do that." And Marcus is just like, "You've killed all of them. There's a pile of bodies over there. They're all new. It's everybody's first day. No one's lasting long in this job. Can we stop with the pretense? My wife died centuries ago. I'm so tired. Get me out of here. Can I take the mic off? I want to walk off set." I find that very fun to watch, but in this show, what I'm going for is that Marcus is just existing in a whole other genre. The rest of the characters are on the Twilight show. Marcus is stuck on a show whose main character died in the pilot season. There's no script, no writers, no directors, and he just has to keep making episodes as a formality. In any given Volturi scene, he's staring at a wall or out a window. If he interjects anything at all into the conversation they're having, it's not really relevant. It's just a vaguely poetic bit of nonsense, riffing on a word they've recently used, and Aro manages to spin it into something profound and relevant. The imaginary fandom for this imaginary show gets to wonder, oh, was Marcus actually trying to say that thing that Aro just said, or was he just like saying stuff, and Aro's making up interpretations to keep him in the loop and make it seem like he's involved. Also, we are going to show why Aro keeps Marcus around, because we're going to show Marcus using his power and being useful. While Marcus is just like staring at a wall, pining for someone centuries dead, Aro can just go, "Hey Marcus, what are your insights into the happy couple?" Marcus turns a just dead, uninterested gaze on Edward and Bella and delivers the most comprehensive breakdown of the dynamic between them and everyone in their lives. It's gonna be spooky how accurate and how deadpan he is, and it's gonna be unsettling that he knows that much and he just does not care. He understands intimately how they feel about their family and about each other. He knows the depths of their soul almost, and he just feels nothing about it. I don't know, I just find stuff like that really tragic. All of the other characters get to feel all these things for the people around them, even if it's hatred or manipulation, they get to manipulation isn't a feeling. And Marcus is so wrung out that he can't only not share in those feelings, he can't only not sympathize with those feelings, he can't even envy those feelings. He can't even want to feel something anymore. But again, the show isn't going to be playing this for angst, so it's not going to be like a delved into thing. It's just going to be kind of happening in the background. Like I said, he's on his own show. When we see him, he is like on his own show. He is very much checked out. In season 6 though, when the Cullens, as I mentioned in the human video, flee to Renee's house, Marcus will be the one to think of the fact that they might have gone there, because Marcus was the only member of the Volturi who was able to get any read on Bella. Marcus is the only member of the Volturi who was able to discern anything about Bella's internal life, because his power does work on Bella, the same way Jasper's power works on Bella. It's more on an emotional level than a mental level, so it works. So he's the first one to think of, oh, she might have gone to her mom's house. Of course, because it's Marcus, instead of just telling the other kings this, he'll say a little like poetic version of it that's kind of vague and open to interpretation. And Aro's gonna assume that he's doing the thing he always does, and he's gonna just kind of make up a wild interpretation of it. It's relevant to what they're talking about, but it's just not what he was saying. And at that point, Marcus finally just goes, "No, I'm saying you forgot about her mother." And this is gonna be the first time Marcus directly and willingly contributes like this. Usually he's just checked out until he says something weird or Aro tells him to use his power, but this time he actively makes a suggestion and actively clarifies what he means when Aro misunderstands. I like the thought of letting him ruin things for the heroes a little bit here. Before this, he was barely a villain at all. He was really just kind of a tag-along accessory to the villains, maybe allowing some viewers to hope that he'll side with the Cullens when it comes down to it. This way we get to be like, no, Marcus figured it out and he did rat on them. Given the choice to withhold information, he did rat them out. Marcus is still one of the leaders of the Volturi and he is still a danger to them. Aro's gonna say something like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. And Marcus is gonna be like, I know, it was growing tedious. Maybe in a less mean way. And later on, we could have him help the Cullens out. Kind of keep them guessing, you know, keep the audience guessing as to where Marcus stands on all of this. I find it fun to have this guy haplessly mourning for 4 or 5 seasons. Overall, not a threat to the good guys, just quiet and pitiable. And then to just say, don't get it twisted, he's not your friend. The fact that he doesn't care about anything is not an asset to you. Now for Jane. Jane is one of the twins. She has a torture power. She can look at you and make you feel as if you are burning alive.
Pain.
She can only do it on one person at a time, and she really loves doing it. It's a mental power, so it doesn't work on Bella because Bella blocks all mental powers. That's all of the canon stuff out of the way. We're keeping how sadistic she is because younger me loved that about her, and I do too. For this, I'm gonna say that she's gonna be kind of a cross between Rhoda from the 1956 version of the Bad Seed.
What did I do if you know so much? You figured out something that never happened. You know, I think you're a very silly man. I hit him with the shoes. What else could I do?
You realize that you murdered him?
But it was his fault. If he gave me the medal like I told him to, I wouldn't have hit him.
And Emma from the 2018 version of the Bad Seed.
What would you give me for a basket of hugs?
A basket of kisses. A basket of kisses. I didn't mean to hurt him. He always over-exaggerated. I won't do it again. Or kicked her. She fell down the stairs. I didn't do anything wrong. She's the adult. She should have protected herself better.
Both of these characters kill people. Both of them go, it wasn't my fault, but in different tones. Rhoda is very much like a prissy girly girl, formal, wears a fancy dress to a school picnic. She's prissy and formal, and there's an entitlement spoiledness to it. Emma from the 2018 version of the Bad Seed has more of a brooding intellectual side than Rhoda. You can see that she is like stoic and stone-faced, so I'm kind of gonna mix both of those vibes for Jane. Jane loves her power and she loves using her power. It makes her happy. The canonical backstory of Jane is that she and her brother Alec were considered witches at the time when they were alive as humans, and they were burned at the stake. She already, I guess, had some kind of power before, that's why she was considered a witch, but her specific power, it's implied that she is giving the feeling that she had upon her death, she is giving that feeling to other people in their minds. At the last minute before she would have perished, Aro came in and saved her like, boy, I would love to collect 2 witch children who can be my enforcers. And that's what happened. I'm bringing this up to say, in this show that I'm making, we're gonna add a degree of jumpiness to her. There is still trauma from having been burnt at the stake, and that trauma can't go away because she can't grow, because vampirism stops growing. Maybe at some point someone taps Jane on the shoulder and she flinches, wheels around, and like just pains them right away. I keep doing hand gestures. None of these vampire powers come with anyone doing this. No one's doing this at all. I think in the show, because like I said, we built on Aro is a master manipulator, we're gonna kind of go all in on the idea that he is very much a father figure, a doting father figure to Jane and Alec. Kind of as a foil to Carlisle, because Carlisle adopts lost souls, and so does Aro. We're gonna see him manipulating them in ways that Carlisle never would. Getting to it later. That being said, Jane and Alec get away with pretty much everything. They get gifts from Aro all the time, and Jane is gonna act like a stereotypical spoiled daughter, not in a full-on Veruca Salt way, or at least not in a 1971 Veruca Salt way. Maybe a touch, like the slightest drop of 2005 Veruca Salt. She never directs anger towards Aro. Aro is always in charge. But Jane acts sweet, she gives hugs, and she is like shocked when she doesn't get her way. She'll pain blast other people in the fallout for that kind of thing. She walks away and then just like looks real hard at one guy and he just crumples to the floor. And Aro's just like, He sees her do this, but he's like, sure, whatever, I don't care. Her overall disposition when not in Aro's presence is one of aloofness and amusement. Basically, take Jane from the movie, but dial up the fact that she derives glee from knowing that she could torture anyone at any time and enjoys doing that. She's powerful and she's smug about it. Maybe costume-wise, she wears the same dark robes as the rest of the Volturi, but maybe she has kind of petticoat vibes to hers. I'm worried I'm describing her like a haunted doll. In fact, maybe scrap the petticoat thing. Oh, another thing, when she pains people, they're gonna scream. I was very annoyed that the movie tried to make it cool or something by having be like just have them contort silently. Why? Let them scream, they're burning alive. If she is setting them ablaze with pain, in their minds they are on fire, then they're not just gonna contort their little bodies and make like, not even really much of a pain face, just kind of like, no, dude, you're on fire. Yell at me. Yell. Beg for it to stop. Seeing her smile peacefully and like happily while they're doing that will be more dissonant than if they're just stretching real hard. Now for Alec. Cool. Anyway, Alec in canon, he was burned at the stake along with his sister, but the power he developed from it was the ability to take away someone's senses. So their sense of touch, sight, smell, taste, all of the senses that you have, he can just like remove them. You are in a void and you can't feel or smell or anything. The implication being that he developed that power because he knew that his sister was burning alive and he was like, man, I wish I could take that pain away from her. And I just... We're not woobifying him though, by the way. Maybe the face I just made makes it seem like I'm gonna woobify him, but I am not. Not entirely anyway. He's gonna, like a jerk woobie. Like one of those jerk woobies. Both the Jane and Alec are gonna be jerk woobies. Let's let Alec have fun too. He's gonna be as sadistic as his sister in the show. We didn't get very much of that in the books. He wasn't really enjoying himself too much in the books or the movies. We're gonna make Alec as sadistic as his sister. He's just more low-key and eerie about it. Jane and Alec are gonna always be together, but you might not see him as quickly as you see her. Cause like sometimes they're just walking together normally, but sometimes he's like lurking in the shadows. One hobby that they do together is that they'll corner whatever low-ranking Volturi member they find, and Alec will cut off their senses and Jane will pain them, which means like they don't have any senses, they're floating in a void, can't feel anything, but they can feel pain exclusively. It makes Jane and Alec feel powerful to do that, and the reactions amuse them. The first time we, the viewers, see Alec smile will be when he's laughing at this. Usually he's pretty stoic, but like when he does this, he's just like, ha ha ha, he's laughing along with his sister. This is basically a regular Volturi hazing ritual, is that they do this. If the person gets up and goes like, hey, Jane and Alec just like cornered me and tortured me real bad, then pretty much anyone in the Volturi would respond, yeah, they do that sometimes. There's not really many people that outrank them. There's not many people with the power to go to Aro and be like, hey, Jane and Alec do this, and have Aro go, hey, Jane and Alec, don't do that to them anymore. Basically, anyone who ranks below Jane and Alec in the Volturi hierarchy are toys. Alec's relationship with Aro is going to kind of parallel and contrast Jasper's relationship with Carlisle. As far as, you know, craving approval goes, I mentioned that in the Cullens video. Jasper, though, is still going to be very much self-determined, despite how he feels about Carlisle and like wanting his approval. Jasper still is very much self-determined, whereas Alec does whatever Aro says or wants. If he ever does have any reservations about Aro's orders, Aro will absolutely emotionally manipulate him. Aro will emotionally manipulate Jane too. He will do it with a smile on his face. Aro is pretty much the only one who either of them are vulnerable with except each other, and that is by his own design. He will use that. Of course, within the timeline of the show, there's room for them to develop connections with other people, but as far as the status quo is concerned, Alec is impishly dismissive towards anyone other than Aro and his sister. With Jane, he is protective, hence his power. With Aro, there's a lot of "are you mad at me" vibes. The slightest hint of negative feedback from Aro just destroys him. People will woobify Alec and Jane in the imaginary fandom for this imaginary show. There will be so much fan fiction of them getting adopted by various good characters or even morally dubious characters who just wouldn't hurt them. Carlisle and Esme adopt Jane and Alec fan fiction. Rosalie and Emmett adopt Jane and Alec fan fiction. Leah adopts Jane and Alec fan fiction. Side note, I gotta write some fan fiction real quick. I'm sure some of that already exists, but the show would for sure exacerbate it. Now for Demetri. All that night, she did not sleep or weep. She sat at the window, waiting for him. Canonically, pretty much the only trait Demetri has is that he's a really good tracker. I guess the way it works is that like a person's mind leaves an imprint that he can follow. It's basically just a way for Bella to be immune to his tracking power without expanding the scope of her shield past mind powers. It doesn't seem like it makes too much sense that his tracking is mind-based, but his tracking is in fact mind-based. So his whole thing is like, oh, he can track someone to anywhere in the world. He is the best tracker there is. He can find anyone anywhere so long as he's been around them once. That's all canon. He can't find Bella because, again, mind power doesn't work on Bella. In this show, I'm gonna say he's a bit of a big shot about it. He's in the same tier as Jane and Alec as far as being indispensable and knowing it, but he doesn't have the same parental hang-ups with Aro. So when we first see him, he is just all hotshot, can't touch this energy. Not to the point of disrespecting the leadership, because again, Aro will never allow a situation where he is not on top, but he will be very annoying to everyone else. Maybe he has like annoying big brother or young uncle vibes towards Jane and Alec, because he is probably one of the few people who, like, if Jane tried to pain Demetri, Demetri could say, hey Aro, she did that, and Aro would be like, hey Jane, don't do that. So they're not allowed to hurt Demetri. Like, you know how I said in my first Twilight video that I wanted to make the Cullens feel more like an actual family that loves each other and not a group of people situationally bound who don't actually like each other very much at all and are willing to attack each other over regular conflicts? Basically, that's how the books went with the Cullens. They're basically mated pairs who hang out together, and Alice and Edward are friends. Yeah, so I'm gonna take the book characterization of the Cullens and kind of put all of that onto the relationship between Demetri and the twins. That's basically where they are, is like, okay, we hang out together and we exchange dialogue. We're not really like friends, but we also can't hurt each other without causing significant changes to our way of life. Because Demetri has this big shot energy, he will occasionally get very close to the line with regards to annoying Jane and Alec, and Jane and Alec will get very close to the line with regards to threatening him, but they'll never quite cross the line. Because Demetri is the tracker, he's also the one who often gets sent to threaten people. So if you think back to the Cullens video, which of course you watched a few minutes or hours ago in preparation for this one, and I appreciate you doing that, Demetri is often the one who will be confronting Esme. I mentioned that Esme is going to get confronted on behalf of whatever the threat is recently, saying, hey, tell Carlisle this from the Volturi, or tell Carlisle this from whoever. Yeah, in this case, when it's the Volturi, Demetri will be the one delivering the threats. And he's gonna be one of the ones who falls for her kindness over this. Yeah, baby, we got another villainous crush locked and loaded. I don't like this affect I'm doing. It's not just Caius and Leah, it's not just amicable exes, Aro and Carlisle. Demetri and Esme will have more Bonkai vibes. Again, I haven't seen Vampire Diaries. What I'm saying is that he's gonna be a more playful, arrogant yandere who will become remorseful later. He's not going to side with the Cullens though. For a while, Aro is going to use Demetri's infatuation with Esme to convince him that confronting the Cullens is the right move, but eventually Demetri's gonna figure out that Aro isn't going to kill Carlisle. There's no situation where Carlisle lives and Demetri walks out of this with Esme. At that point, his fondness for her does threaten his loyalty to the Volturi, so Aro's gonna call in Chelsea to go ahead and sever that bond. Chelsea's gonna sever his feelings for Esme with her power. This will hurt fans of the ship. They will be very angry at me personally, and that's valid, because that sucks. That's a bad way to end a ship, and I'm very sorry, but just, you know, character-wise, it makes the most sense to me. Now for Felix. Felix's whole thing in canon is that he's big and strong and a physical threat, and Emmett really wants to wrestle him. For the show, we really don't have to do that much more with him. His role can still be the guy whose role in the Volturi is to be big and scary. In contrast to Emmett's strong and jovial energy, I want Felix to be more the strong and silent type. He doesn't talk or laugh or emote, he is just doing his job. This makes it even better on the rare occasions where we break this rule by having him say something or laugh. I feel like a lot could be ruined by the premise of a thing happens, and then the strong silent character suddenly laughs. Like, I feel like that could be a pretty cheap joke if we don't carry it out correctly. We're gonna treat him with more quiet dignity than the movies did. He never gets pained by Jane like he does in the movie. He's never argumentative or anything. He is just there to do his job and no one bothers him. Like, the fact that he doesn't get pained by Jane isn't even just a matter of, oh, his rank in the Volturi is high, because I don't think his rank in the Volturi would be too high. There are a lot of big, strong guys. Even if there aren't a lot of big, strong vampires, there are a lot of big, strong guys you could turn into a vampire if you wanted to. He works a lot with the high-ranking people, but like, he's not indispensable. He just doesn't get hurt by anyone because he doesn't really provoke anyone or have that much of a presence as to be interesting to someone who is sadistic. Like, I could see an angle from which maybe Jane and Alec look at him like, oh, he's so strong, it would make us really cool if we could take him down, but they just kind of don't feel like doing that. They'd rather torture pathetic people because they have more fun reactions. So yeah, like I said, that's all there is to Felix. I'm not developing Felix too much. Now for Chelsea. Chelsea is not really seen in the series. Like, we don't hear from Chelsea, we just know of Chelsea. She can cut your feelings for those around you or create some feelings for someone else. I believe that doesn't apply to mate bonds, because I believe there is a line from Edward or someone that's like, oh yeah, Chelsea can't break what we have, so she would have to get both of us. But it applies to familial bonds. She can break that stuff, which isn't great. Canon-wise, it isn't great to explicitly say, yes, familial love is intrinsically lesser than romantic love. That's canon, guys. But, you know, vampire mating is a supernatural thing. Honestly, a vampire mate bond isn't exactly a canon entity in the Twilight universe. It's just Stephenie Meyer's idea of true love that she uses for both vampire mating and imprinting. But fans who want to kind of go, this magic has rules route with it, say, okay, this thing that is just a characteristic of what Stephenie Meyer writes love to be, just how she writes love and I guess idealizes true love to be, even though it's often terrible because, you know, of all the abuse and stuff. This thing we're gonna instead say is a trait of the supernatural characters. We're gonna say that this is a vampire thing. We're gonna say that this is a werewolf thing. Naturally, I got rid of the abuse from the werewolf side and largely tamped down on it from the vampire side, so it's more feelings of obsession than acts of obsession. I just had to acknowledge that because I realized I hadn't mentioned it in the previous videos. Vampire mating is a concept. They say mate, and they do say that vampires will act vengefully vengefully for their mates. They love their mates forever, and vampires don't often change, so when they see someone and fall in love with them, they can't unfall in love with them, etc. Vampire mating is kind of a thing in the books, but it's built up more in fanon to be like a more explicit aspect of the lore. With regards to Chelsea, there's a very popular Twilight fanfiction called Luminosity with a sequel called Radiance, both of which I have read, that interprets Chelsea as a control freak who is obsessed with having everybody around her love her. She needs everyone to love her, and that's why her power is the way that it is because like she just needs to create these feelings, create love for her in other people. It makes her frustrated when there are people around her who don't love her and she has to fix it. That's a very cool spin on the character, but of course I'm not going to use that. I have to go a different way with it just by virtue of that interpretation existing. Here, Chelsea is going to be basically the living embodiment of your fear that your friends secretly hate you. Instead of the like externally perky, internally turbulent version of Chelsea from Luminosity, this Chelsea is going to be more like a combination of a siren and sadness from inside out. Her demeanor is kind of mousy and needy. Watching her use her power on someone is going to be unsettling and fun. Very much psychological thriller type stuff. It's going to be very much like, they don't care about you. They never have. Don't reach out. They don't care. You don't even care. She's not saying that with her mouth. She's looking at you, and there's an audio overlay of those kinds of lines whispering in the background. And then there will be a much louder sound of just scissors closing. Like the fates have cut your lifeline, but on a relationship level. And then it'll just be silence after that. I love that. Another part of her power is that she can craft bonds between people. We're not gonna emphasize that part as hard because I like the spin I've given Aro where he's charismatic and manipulative enough to draw people in on his own. We're not getting rid of it entirely though. Her crafting bonds can be something that happens when Aro isn't around or there isn't time for Aro to have a lengthy conversation with someone. She can do the preliminary work of just kind of sowing the seeds of receptiveness, but she absolutely cannot build the kind of undying loyalty that Aro inspires. At least not in one session. When Chelsea enters a scene, there will be a feeling of dread. It is like an executioner has walked into the room, except instead of killing people, she kills the love you feel for people. We won't see a lot of her, but when she walks in the room, your heart will skip a beat in a bad way because you're like, oh no, my ship, no. Is she about to ruin my ship? Yep, she ruined my ship. Thanks, Chelsea. One last thing, and this is pretty important. Chelsea can build or sever bonds, but she can't see relationships in the way that Marcus can. I don't right now have a way in which that is relevant, but it is something to bring up. She can't see relationships, she can only manipulate them. Sulpicia, Aro's mate. That's all we know about her, so I don't have to say too much about canon. I know that in the Twilight Gender Bent AU that Stephanie Meyer published, Sulpicia takes Aro's place as the head of the Volturi, and Athenadora takes Caius's place, and Marcus is still Marcus. I think that's true, right? I did not read that. Sulpicia doesn't do anything in the series, and honestly she isn't gonna do much here either, but she will be present and she will have a personality. I think the best way to make her interesting without actually giving her anything to do is to make her mysterious and a little confusing. So I want her to seem really nice. Not just nice in the way that Aro is nice, I want her to seem genuinely caring and innocent. Maybe the first time we see her, she's taking care of a baby bird that's like fallen out of the nest and she's caring for it in her own home. We see her caring for something and we largely get the impression, oh wow, she's genuinely a caring person. I want the viewer to look at Sulpicia and be like, she must not know that Aro's evil. She seems like she either couldn't handle it or wouldn't tolerate it if she knew that the love of her life is killing people, so surely she doesn't. Even though she has red eyes, I want part of your mind to be sitting there rationalizing how she can live on a diet of human blood without knowing that she's hurting anyone. Really, she does know. She knows. This isn't gonna be like a twist or like a huge moment. It's not like a groundbreaking surprise. It's just kind of cool. But yeah, she's very sweet and kind. Everyone in the Volturi likes her. And when Aro goes up to her like, well, I gotta kill this guy, she's like, I know you can do it, honey. There will be a lengthy period of time in which the viewer is kept guessing as to how much she knows about Aro's feelings for Carlisle and whether she would be upset to know that Aro still has some kinds of feelings for Carlisle. She seems nice, they seem to be in love, but Aro still feels something for Carlisle. Is she jealous? Are her feelings hurt? No, the first time she and Carlisle are in a scene together, she will go out of her way to be like, hey Carlisle, like a little bit flirty. And Aro is also a little bit flirty. They're both a little bit flirty. She's also gonna flirt with Esme. It's gonna be a whole thing. Again, she's not gonna be doing anything plot relevant. Maybe we'll give her Renata's power just to simplify things. In canon, there's a Volturi member named Renata whose thing is that she can keep people from attacking. Like, if you try to attack her, you can't. Mentally, you cannot keep going towards her. You'll just be like, oh, no, I guess. Not only her, she can also extend that to like other people, which is why they keep her around. She's meant to be around Aro, and so if you try to attack Aro, you just kind of can't. This is a mental power, so of course it doesn't work when Bella's shield is involved. We could give that to Sulpicia, and I guess that would keep her involved in more scenes, because then she has to be in the room more often. Although I do think I kind of like the idea of her having no power, just because it's like, okay, so we know that Aro keeps her around because he genuinely loves her. We know this because she doesn't have a power, she's not inherently beneficial. I think I like that that better. So I think we're gonna keep Renata as someone. Hello, I'm editing this video. At this point in the recording process, I started talking about how I planned for Renata to end up being a spy later and tell the Cullen some crucial information about Aro and the Volturi and stuff. Like in the footage I just cut out of the video, I talk a lot about how Renata could be like silently in the background for a lot of Volturi scenes so that it's surprising later on when she shows up and is super important. I've now turned away from that idea, and I think instead what I would want to happen with Renata is that I want her and Sulpicia to be close, because Sulpicia is Aro's mate, so she must be very well guarded. Aro has Renata with Sulpicia, and Renata maybe is in love with Sulpicia. Sulpicia is really sweet. Just something I thought I'd throw out there. I think that would be cool, a nice Renata-Sulpicia friendship. Yeah, that's gonna be the thing. So Renata's gonna be a traitor later, so we can give her something to do, because it seems like a bummer to just be like, hey, actress, you're gonna be in every Volturi scene and you're not gonna say a word. Last on the list is Heidi. Heidi lures the prey. Canonically, that's her whole thing, is that she has this quality about her that makes it so that humans will follow her. Not so much so that they are in a full-on trance, because it's mentioned that at least some of them realize there's something wrong as they're being brought to their deaths. Heidi's whole thing is she brings large groups of humans into the lair of the masters under the guise of giving tours of the castle so they can be consumed for sustenance. Let's give her a little bit of dimension. I think we're gonna give her kind of a collector vibe. Before each tour, she takes a picture with the whole tour group, and she used to have all of the pictures hanging in her room, a la Rose from Get Out. After this many years doing it, even factoring in how few of them involved cameras existing, she probably has run out of room in her living quarters, a la Rapunzel from Tangled. So she probably has her own dedicated gallery somewhere on the premises where she just hangs pictures of herself with all the tour groups. Paint the walls some more, I'm sure there's room somewhere. Then I'll brush and brush and brush and brush my hair. Sorry. Before cameras, she would just have the prey write their names in a little logbook, and she still does that. She has whole shelves of those books, and she gets really excited whenever she brings in someone with a name she hasn't collected yet. Oh, I've never had a insert name here before. We're gonna establish this kind of subtly as early as season 2. While Edward and Bella and Alice are being taken to see Aro after Edward's failed public sparkling, which now that I think about it, I might have to make some changes to. But anyway, after that, they pass by Heidi while she's kind of collecting the tour group, like greeting them, like the tour group has been in a lobby or something like that, atrium type area, and she is greeting them, getting everyone to sign the logbook. And she says something like, Aurelia, I've never had an Aurelia before, but like with an actually unusual name. Critically, it's gonna be an unusual name, not just a name that sounds foreign to an American audience. That's not a particular dig at anything, I just think that that's something that some writer might do. It would be stupid beyond belief to have her be like, oh, I've never toured someone named Wong before. Like, oh really, you didn't? You haven't? One of the most common names. Then Edward and Bella move past her. They don't see her in the building after that. They have their conversation with Aro. That whole scene plays out. As they're leaving, Heidi's bringing the tour group into the Masters to be eaten, set up, and pay off. And obviously we'll get more of her in season 5. I think she'll run into Leah around the Volturi compound and start up a conversation. Her charisma is not just supernatural, she is genuinely good at conversation. But she and Leah eventually end up discussing what she does for the Volturi, and Leah is horrified by what she does. She's horrified by what she does, how she does it, how casually she describes it. Heidi's just like, hey, predator prey, it's the circle of life. They die quickly and cleanly. Most of them don't even have time to fear, and I carry their names and their stories with me. It's not exactly a novel idea, but remember how Hunger Games fans used to like to talk about how Caesar Flickerman remembers all the kids he interviewed? We're giving Heidi a tiny dash of that, but just enough to keep it interesting. And that's everyone. I hit my chest with the laptop lid, but lid, not lid. Screen would be the screen, the laptop screen. I hit myself with the laptop screen, but yeah, that's all of the characters I have for this video. My throat hurts, my mom called in the middle of it. So mom, if you're watching, that's why I was a little bit abrupt on the phone. I was in the middle of making a vehicle. I was in the middle of making a vehicle is what I was doing. You know what kind of vehicle? A star vehicle that'll launch me right into obscurity. Have a great day, enjoy life, look outside at the trees and stars. You are just as valuable as they are because you are a part of the natural world. Little bitty Desiderata reference right there. Drink some water. Good to stay hydrated. Eat some healthful foods that you enjoy and are not allergic to. Call your loved ones on the phone, or if you know that they, like myself, don't like phone calls, please text them instead. Or FaceTime. FaceTime is actually okay most of the time. It gets rid of the weird social, I hear your voice but don't see your face aspect of it. And also it removes the pressure to be talking constantly. I don't know. FaceTime's better. I find FaceTime to be better. It's like text or FaceTime. Voice calls I find off-putting. And have a great day. This outro was more of a train wreck than usual. I should probably just start scripting these instead of trying to improv nice affirmations For every video, I should probably like write down, okay, here are the nice things that we say. And have a great day.